Are dungeons worth doing, and how the heck do I stop getting lost while going through them so much? I'll answer both those questions. The first one's a guaranteed yes. Second one is a lot more complicated to answer. But I'll go ahead and explain how dungeons work and why they're valuable. And then at the end of it, I'll show you how to go through them and not get lost so much. So dungeons have 5 different levels. Level 13 in the starting area. There's a level 19 dungeon? What's going on? Level 29, very close to starting area. Level 38 in the top right. Level 40 in the bottom left. And level 45 in the top left. I have no idea why the numbers scale that way. It's interesting, to say the least. Dungeons themselves have very similar layouts, which is why navigating them will be kind of easy when you know what to look for. They also have an alpha boss at the very end of them, which is really good to try and capture because they have higher IV potential, IV being their attack, defense, or health could be really good, and it's just nice to capture. And also 2 chests at the very end after you either kill or capture that alpha boss that give you absurd loot. Even in the early game, you can get attack necklaces that are like basic but still more damage, life necklaces for more HP, all kinds of accessories, all kinds of schematics, and there's potential to get legendary schematics from these chests as well. The power of the schematics is based on the area. Same thing goes for the loot. In general, the higher level, the better the loot. Feathered Hairband 2, Defense Pendant 1. If a chest gives you a schematic, that schematic can be any rarity. Green through gold. Gold being legendary, green being uncommon. There's also other chests you can open along your journey. They're not really worth it because it's more of a hassle to go to them. There's sometimes a red chest, sometimes, but usually it's going to be purple and gold chests that will give you loot based on the area. In the early game, they might be worth because you need the gold or maybe the PAL souls to upgrade your PAL's defense, attack, work speed, whatever the case. And there's also a bunch of PALs that you don't normally find, if at all, in the game, unless you breed for them, such as Kilmaris. I don't think you can get Kilmaris outside of dungeons. There's also Ice Reptyros, which I think I've seen outside dungeons, but not very often. The alpha boss at the end of dungeons is important as discussed earlier, and you can choose the one you want to slay based on the selection the dungeon you're in provides you. And you can sort of just cycle through them and, you know, get the one you want eventually. How this works, which I want to mention, it can be a hassle. It can be more of a pain than it's worth, but I'll give you the tools and you do what you want with them. So if you see a boss, like the alpha boss, and you're like, oh, this is, you know, neat, but I want something different. For instance, I'm in the higher level dungeons or low level dungeons. I want Pangolette. I run away a decent distance, and it's like a certain threshold based on where the alpha boss is in the arena and where you run to. You sort of just de-instance it, you despawn it, and then when you run back, a new one's there. What makes it more trouble than it's worth is doing it over and over and over again until you finally get the one PAL you're searching for. It can take you probably upwards of 4 minutes doing this over and over again. It is way better when you have a mount. If you don't have a mount, don't do this. It's not worth it. Having to sit there and jog across the map real quick, like, oh, it despawned. Let's run back now. Just use a mount if you want to do this. Level up your mount with like freaking all the passive movement speed traits, and then it isn't that big a deal. But in general, you're probably better off just going to different dungeons and going through them. In the bottom left of the map with the level 40 dungeons, near like the lava area, they're hard to find. There is a map. There's an interactive map. I'll leave a link down below that will show you where all the dungeon locations can be. And like I mentioned, I guess, or like I will mention soon or have mentioned, I never know. I edit videos really strangely. They are going to be always in a set location, but not always active. So you can use those maps to figure out what's going down. And I believe that there should always be a dungeon active in the area you're in, even if you're doing dungeons back to back to back to back. I assume they respawn quickly, but I don't know. The end of a dungeon is marked by a tree. It can be white, it can be green, it can have no leaves at all, but the telltale is going to be just a giant tree in a room. And the actual entrance to this, I guess, boss room, the end of it, isn't always the same. Right now, it's a regular little doorway that we see in the dungeons all the time. Sometimes it's a giant little crack in the wall, and it can have torches, it can not have torches, it can be kind of hard to see. So the advice I can give to make going to dungeons really easy, or easier, just scan all of the entrances you can see and discern whether or not it's something that you normally go into to then reach the end of a dungeon. In this case, it's right there, so it's like really easy. But there are some paths, I guess. Now, how do I traverse through dungeons and not get lost? Well, there, good sir, or ma'am, I have studied the anatomy of dungeons to figure out said answer to a decent percentage of success. So here we have a little room with a bunch of sections to go into. That one has a little weird thing like that. To the right, we have a wall-looking like thing, and then behind us, we have those guys. Go forward. This wall is actually a fork. There's a fork system in dungeons. You go right at the fork with the water. That is the path you take, and if you do that, you'll be very close, in some cases, to the boss. Like, this is the correct path to the boss every single time. What do you know? He wasn't lying. Chickens? Cavern layouts are very similar across different levels. For instance, the first one I showed you was level 13. This is level 45, the highest one in the game. To our left, we have the probably open room, maybe one extra room that leads to a single chest. Not the correct path you want to take. Then to our right, we have another very open room that's a dead end with a single chest in it that isn't really worth going for in most cases. Forward, we have the fork system. The wall, to our left, the solid path, to our right, the water. We go on the water path. We then have the boss. This is... I didn't kill the boss. Okay. In the Frost dungeons, a room that looks like this with these stepping stones can lead to the fork room, as seen as such. And if that happens, you just take the right side like this, and you turn left with the water, and the boss should be close, or in this case right here. I don't want that. Let's talk about the cavern's third law, or an exception. In this situation, we have a cavern with a fork in the road. Normally, take the right side with the water, but we don't have water. We have lava. Take the right side, you're going the wrong direction. And instead, in almost every situation I can think of, you'll come across it looking like this, going basically the opposite direction, and you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I should turn around. Nope, just keep going forward. You go forward, you'll find the tree. I don't know how soon, but you'll find it. Oh my god. Lava doesn't hurt you here. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. That's a tree. I need a digatoise. People don't like when I say that, and I say dig a toise or diggy toise. Like, his name is Dig Toise, bro. Dig. Sacred Mountain Cavern, level 45. These can be the absolute fastest dungeons you can do if you have decent damage, just because of the structure that they can sometimes have. So running forward here, the only door we can go through, in most cases, is going to be this one. You just run straight, because if we see the wall, right side we see water, we cross that, and most times that's the correct path. And then we have the boss. Tombat, what the... Give me Pangolette. Pangolette Suzuki Aqua. Go Gadget. I heavily advise you to bring a small rideable mount into these dungeons when you go exploring them, such as a direwolf, which works fantastic. A Rayhound is what I use, also works great. A Kitsune, small mounts that can fit through these doorways. Because if you bring, like, let's say a Jet Dragon, which is really fast, you can't go through practically any doorway, which means you have to hit a doorway, you can't go through, dismount, desummon your pal, go on the other side, summon your pal, mount, go to the next doorway, repeat the process. It takes so much time away from you. It's not a big deal if it's your first time going to dungeon, you won't even notice a difference. But the moment you get used to riding mounts and actually traversing fast like that, you gotta notice it. And when you don't have that mount, you're like, oh, this is dreadful. I played on my level 19 character right now for testing purposes, just to show you guys some gameplay of that. And not having a mount does not feel great when I know what kind of speed I could have. It is good to have a flying mount, because in some cases, like a giant rock wall thing, you could grapple it. That's a possibility. Can I jump this? Wait. Yo, Rayhound's crazy. Rayhound's a billy goat. But upon further investigation, Ragnarok is a flying pal that can go through doorways. My favorite place to go cavern crawling is at Icy Weasel Hill, because we have 3 dungeons that are super easy to find. This one, white dungeon, and the background is a whole green mountainous place. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It is lit. What does that even mean? How does a sore thumb stick? What makes it stick out? Other ones right here, they're not always active. In some cases, and sometimes, none of them are active, which is kind of a bummer. But that was 1 dungeon, 2 dungeon. 3 is somewhere right here. They're all 3 active? Sheesh. And there's a whole bunch of other dungeons in this area too. Just use the interactive map. It is a lifesaver. And if you're like a naturalist, you don't want to use any outside sources, have fun looking. That works too. Oh my god, it chunks!
Yeah.
Help me! Help me, Tom Cruise! Help me, Jesus Christ! Help me, Allah! Ah! I'm actually just dead. I'm swimming in the lava. How come he's okay? I've heard you can get purple pendants, purple accessories. I don't know if I believe all that, but that's what I've been hearing. Even if you have frost armor equipped, if you do not have a frost shirt or a fire POW, you will take a ton of damage from the weather at night. So I just carry, I keep the freaking thermal, I keep these shirts on me. I keep these shirts on me. I normally just have a attack pendant or a life pendant below it. Mostly attack for me. Yep, dude, it puts you it puts you in the lava. That dungeon just puts you in the lava. I think you die. I don't have a healing powder to save my life. You just die. That's twisted.